Okay, so young men are supposedly falling behind in today's society, right? There's all this research being done and studies coming out about how, we're staying single, we're staying out of relationships, we're moving back home with our parents, we aren't going to college and getting the degrees and jobs we used to, we're not buying houses, we're not buying cars. All of these things that people are talking about on social media and even it's reached mainstream media talking about these issues. And they frame it in such a way that that means that we are failing in society or that we aren't accomplishing what we should be doing. And I believe the stats are true. I'm not saying the stats aren't true. I believe they're true. And just from my own experience and other guys I'm talking to, I think this is true. But I think that them saying that that means we're falling behind and that we're failing is actually false. In fact, I believe it's the opposite. I actually think that we are winning because we found the new meta to play, right? We stopped playing the old game. We stopped playing the old meta. So I'll get back to that in a second. But imagine this. Okay, so a young man, he's at home playing video games. He lives with his parents. Maybe he works part-time. He's not really doing college. What would be the incentive for him to put himself in an uncomfortable position and go gather more resources than he needs? Right? This is a thing that always has been and always will be so long as the human species is around. What would be the thing that would inspire him to go out there, that would give him that drive to go out there and acquire all these things like a house, a fancy degree and job, making more money than he needs? What would really drive that? I'll tell you right now, the main driving factor, whether you want to admit it or not, is women, right? It's the desire to go out there, find a woman, and start a family. That would be the main driver as to why you would go out and do all this in the first place, right? The main driver would be for you to go out and get more resources than you need so you can start a family. That is the main driver. That has always been the driver and will be the driver for men to go out and acquire resources. So I believe the reason we're seeing all these statistics coming out saying how, we aren't participating in the modern economy is because for us to be economically productive, we need the incentive of starting a family to go out and actually gather more resources than we need. And I believe that the incentive for us to go out and get in relationships, modern relationships, and start a family, the cons now just outweigh the pros to the point where we're just giving up, right? We just stop playing the game. So why is it that the cons now outweigh the pros in terms of us going out there, getting relationships and, starting families? I believe there's a lot of reasons, but I really want to focus on this one, which is really the best way I can kind of explain this. So imagine there's a young man, all right? He does what society wants him to do. He goes to college, he gets a degree, or he, spends 4 years getting a degree that hopefully he actually enjoys. He actually is interested in for those 4 years. Hopefully by the time he gets out, AI hasn't completely changed the role or the job that he was thinking of yet. Hopefully the curriculum is up to date and he's actually learning the skills that he needs that will be applicable in the real world. So let's just say all those things are true. He's still interested in what he's doing. He graduates, he gets his degree. He's tens of thousands of dollars in debt now, right? And he goes and starts working for a company. He finds a job that pays enough for him to, get his living expenses and pay for his college debt. Typically, coming right out of college, you're not just going to land some six-figure job. So, especially depending on where you're living. So, essentially he's just going to take what he can get, which is, just a median income job to pay his expenses. All right. So now he goes and he finds a woman to settle down with, right? They fall in love, they want to get together and start a family. But the thing is, she also has debt from her degree. So logically, with that being the case, with both of them being in debt from their degrees, they're going to get married and which costs even more money. And then they're going to go buy a house. Okay, so they're going to go buy a house and now they're in even more debt. So now they're under the burden of all this debt. They are essentially getting handcuffed to their jobs as they go deeper in debt. And then they decide to have kids, right? So that increases their cost of living, that increases their expenses and increases the amount of debt that they have because they don't have enough extra money to pay it down. It also handcuffs them to their jobs because they can't go and find other jobs that pay enough or pay more, right? Because they're stuck in their location with the house that they bought. So let's just say 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It doesn't really matter when it happens. But eventually, his wife comes to him and says, hey, I want to get a divorce. I'm not happy in this relationship. For whatever reason it might be, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, now he's in a position where he's absolutely screwed over, right? He's fucked. There is nothing that he's going to be able to do in this situation that's really going to have a good outcome for him. So in this scenario, now he's got to split up all his assets, right? Most likely he's going to lose his career in the process because the amount of stress that he has to endure, and just the fact that he probably hates his job already at this point because the fact he's been handcuffed to it for so long. A lack of freedom and autonomy is really what can cause a lot of depression amongst people. So he's got to split up his assets, potentially start paying alimony, child support. Now his household is completely split up and he may or may not see his kids. And he's in complete financial ruin, back at square one before he even went to college, except now he's in all this debt, right? And he's in a worse position because he's also way older than he was when he first started. So this, my friends, is the old meta. This is the game that everybody's telling us we're losing at. Does that sound like something that you would want to win at? Does that sound like a game you would want to win at? Like, am I crazy, or is it just me, or what? Because there's no way I would be wanting to play that game, even if the odds were stacked in my favor, which they're not, right? The odds are stacked against you. We've seen our fathers go through this, our grandfathers go through this, our uncles go through this. And if you think about it, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others, right? That's a quote. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So I think what we're seeing here is that we are learning from the mistakes of our forefathers. We're starting to see that the game that they've been playing for so long, where has it really gotten them? Where has it really gotten them? It hasn't gotten them very far, And even with what they have accomplished, they end up at the end of the road in a really bad financial position, a really bad emotional position. And I think really what we're seeing is young men are starting to wake up to the fact that this is not a good option, right? This is not a good game to play with everything against you, right? We're not stupid. We grew up playing video games. We understand that the meta changes over time, right? And whoever has the best meta, whoever understands how the game works the best, always has such an advantage that almost every time, 9 times out of 10, they're going to win. So I think that we're starting to realize there's a new meta. And for me, the new meta is really simple, right? It's just to avoid the scenario that I just described above. So the downside of following the new meta is that your perceived status is going to be lowered, right? Society is going to look at you in a sort of lower status way because you don't have that high paying career, right? You don't have the house, you don't have all these different things. If you're living at home with your parents, you're going to take a hit in terms of your short-term perceived status. But if you think about this, you're not stupid. You're thinking long-term. And if you're thinking long-term, the best way to win and the best way to increase your status in the long term and actually have a life that, isn't completely in shambles would be to avoid the scenario I described above at all costs. So that includes things like avoiding college, right? Because college, you're taking out a ton of debt. You don't even know if at the end you're gonna, be able to get a job. There's no guarantee. You avoid things like marriage because the contract that you have to sign and with the laws the way that they are is just completely unfavorable to you, and the odds are completely stacked against you that your marriage is going to even work out. So you avoid things like that. Maybe you move in with your parents for a while to avoid paying an exorbitant amount of rent. Okay, so maybe you do that. Maybe you start just doing like a 9 to 5. A lot of jobs will pay you a decent wage, without even needing a college degree. Maybe you start a business on the side. Maybe you go online and try to make money online. Okay, there's a lot of different options besides just following this typical path. And we're also avoiding buying houses at all-time highs, right? We're avoiding cars that we don't need to get in debt with. And you see, who are always the people who are saying that you're falling behind or you're not participating in society, you're a bum, you need to man up. Oh, you hear this all the time, like, oh, you need to man up, or, oh yeah, like young guys they don't like to work nowadays. We always hear all this thing, but who are the people who benefit from us following that old meta, that old system? It's the government, corporations, education system, the family court, the bankers, right? All of those people who profit from our stupidity are the ones who are publishing all this research and constantly shouting about how we're failing in society and we're not manning up, right? Which is interesting because they benefit big time from us going and buying shit that we don't need. You ever thought of that? I believe this also explains why we've seen an increase in the digital nomad trend, right? And people getting their passport gang re-up. I think that this all has to do with that, right? People traveling, looking for better opportunities elsewhere, which I'm not saying you have to do or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's a part of and is a symptom of the fact that people aren't playing this old game anymore. And so I think that we're finally starting to understand that this is not the path to go down, and society is getting pissed about it because there's a lot of different institutions within society that benefit big time from us basically following the old regime, the old way of life, okay, the old meta. And so I think that basically this is what's going on. And I just want to say this because I don't think that it means that we're falling behind. I think that actually means we're avoiding the mistakes that everyone else has been making for all these past generations, and we're actually getting smart to the fact. And I don't think that means we're falling behind. I think that even if you were to do nothing, right? I'm not someone to sit here and be like, hey, you should sit home with your, at your parents' house playing video games, not being productive. I'm the last person, as you know, on my channel who would be promoting that kind of lifestyle. But I think even if you were to do that, even if you weren't really to have any ambitious goals or really go for anything in life besides just working, your job and just doing what you enjoy for hobbies, you're going to win big time. You're going to be golden if you can avoid the things that I mentioned in this video, right? You will literally win just by not playing the game. The new meta is just simply stop playing the old game. Stop being taken advantage of. Stop playing by the old rules. And if you do that, yeah, there's going to be the consequence of having lower status or whatever. But the upside is that, 10 years from now, you're not going to be getting divorced in court and lose your job and be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for something that you hate doing anyways. Right? So for me, if you weigh those two, it's pretty clear which one to take. And I think that is exactly why the cons outweigh the pros when it comes to being incentivized to participate in the modern economy and getting into relationships and starting families, which is what would drive that. So I can't vouch for other countries. I don't know how it is. If you're from another country, leave a comment down below and let me know if the situation is similar over there, because this is a big thing that we're dealing with in the United States right now. If you disagree with me, leave a comment. I have an open mind. Try to change my mind. Or if you have just something that you want to add to this conversation, go ahead and add that. This is without me even getting into the fact that there's a now global dating marketplace and the dating world is a minefield to navigate, okay, to put it lightly. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm just saying that's another element that I didn't even touch on. And so there's a lot going on right now. And it's not just as simple as men need to man up, men need to get up and go back into the system. Once you start seeing this for what it is, and once you start quote unquote exiting the matrix, right, and kind of giving up on this old path and these archaic ways of doing things, you're not going to want to go back. So that's pretty much it. I've got a free newsletter link down below. Definitely hop on that, join the mailing list, because if I get canceled for making this video, we'll have a way to communicate. I'll have a way to let you know where I moved on to next to make some more content. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.